My son applauded when my boss kissed my wife at my own retirement party. 40 years of marriage, 40 years of fatherhood, gone in one moment while a room full of colleagues cheered for the man who'd been stealing my life savings. But here's the thing about engineers: we back up everything, including revenge. While they thought I was losing my mind to dementia, I was recording every phone call, every bank transfer, every meeting where they planned my murder. Yes, murder. Because that nursing home they picked for me, average life expectancy, 11 months. And my boss owns 30% of it. They calculated that killing me was worth more than keeping me alive. My name is Patrick Wilson, and 6 months ago I discovered my family had turned my retirement party into an execution rehearsal. They had medical records forged, inheritance papers signed, and a death facility ready to collect my body. The twisted part? They almost pulled it off. If I hadn't caught one bank error, I'd be dead in some hellhole nursing home right now, and they'd be splitting $2.1 million at my funeral. But I'm not dead. They're facing life sentences, and the evidence I collected is about to destroy 17 other families who thought they were just caring for elderly relatives. Drop your location in the comments if you want to know whether your state protects people from their own families, because what happened next will make you question everyone you trust. This story has more plot twists than a murder trial, because that's exactly what it became. The retirement party was supposed to be my victory lap. December 15th, 7:30 p.m., Meridian's main conference room. 40 colleagues, a sheet cake with "Thanks Patrick" and blue frosting, and my pension payout paperwork sitting on the table like a diploma. $2.1 million. Every penny I'd earned, saved, and invested over 4 decades of service. Linda wore the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. She looked beautiful. Edward Morrison, my boss and VP of Engineering, gave a speech about dedication and legacy. The applause felt warm, real. Then Linda stood up. "Patrick's been struggling lately," she announced to the room. "Memory issues. It's been difficult." The room went quiet. Edward nodded sympathetically, like they'd rehearsed this moment. "That's why we've made some arrangements," Linda continued, "to help Patrick transition into this new phase of life." She pulled out a folder. Divorce papers, signed and notarized. "Edward will be helping manage Patrick's affairs during this challenging time," she said, sliding the papers across to me. "The children agree it's for the best." My son David stepped forward. 28 years old, MBA from Northwestern. "Dad, he's a better man for this situation, someone Mom can rely on." My hands didn't shake when I picked up those papers. My voice didn't crack when I spoke. "Interesting timing," I said, but I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. The first sign came 18 months ago. Linda started forgetting our anniversary date, but she could recall the exact balance in our checking account down to the penny. She'd always been terrible with numbers. The second sign was Edward's sudden interest in my health. "Patrick, you seem tired lately. Maybe you should see someone about that memory thing." He'd never shown concern for my well-being in 15 years of working together. The third sign was the medical appointment Linda scheduled without telling me. Dr. Hamilton, a neurologist she'd found. "Just a routine check, honey. At our age, it's smart to stay ahead of these things." Dr. Hamilton diagnosed me with early-stage dementia after a 20-minute conversation. "Stage 2, he said, affecting judgment and financial reasoning. The timing was remarkable. 3 days before my retirement became official. I requested my medical records. "Standard procedure," I told his office. "I'm an engineer. I like documentation." What I found made my blood run cold. The diagnostic notes described symptoms I'd never exhibited, conversations I'd never had, test results from appointments I'd never attended. Linda had been building a medical history for me. On paper, I was a man losing his mind. But here's what Linda didn't know about engineers. We back up everything, including ourselves. I'd taken my own cognitive assessment online. Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale, administered through their continuing education program. Score, 97%. Top 3% for my age group. I'd also taken a financial literacy test through AARP. Perfect score. The medical fraud was just the beginning. While Linda and Edward were crafting my mental decline, I was documenting their real crime. Chase Private Client had sent me duplicate statements for months, an error in their system they'd never corrected. The statements showed our primary retirement account, $847,000, but I'd been tracking every deposit for 40 years. The balance should have been $1,190,000. $343,000 was missing. I pulled every bank record, every investment statement, every transfer notification. The money had been moved in 47 separate transactions over 18 months. Small amounts, never enough to trigger automatic alerts. Every transfer was authorized with my supposedly deteriorating signature. Linda had been practicing. They didn't know I had copies of everything. The guardianship petition arrived by courier the morning after my retirement party. Court 14B, Judge Patricia Stevens presiding. Emergency hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. Linda's attorney had done his homework. The petition included Dr. Hamilton's diagnosis, statements from my children about my concerning behavior, and Edward's sworn affidavit about my declining performance at work. According to the filing, I was a danger to myself and others, unable to manage my finances, in need of immediate protection. The protection would be Linda's, naturally, with Edward Morrison listed as financial co-guardian. I dressed carefully that morning, navy suit, the one Linda had bought me for promotion ceremonies, red tie, freshly shined shoes. Linda met me at the courthouse steps. She'd brought both our sons. "Patrick, this is for your own good," she said, touching my arm like I might break. "We all love you." David nodded. "Dad, you've been forgetting things, important things. Let us help." Our younger son, Michael, shifted uncomfortably. "The doctors say it's only going to get worse." I looked at my family. My wife of 32 years, my children, whom I'd taught to ride bikes, helped with homework, walked through every crisis of their young lives. "I understand," I said. The hearing lasted 17 minutes. Linda's attorney presented the medical evidence, Dr. Hamilton's report, Edward's workplace observations, character witnesses who'd noticed my confusion at social events. My court-appointed attorney, assigned that morning, barely looked up from his notes. Judge Stevens reviewed the paperwork with the brisk efficiency of someone handling her 20th guardianship case that week. "Mr. Wilson," she said, "do you understand the nature of these proceedings?" "Yes, Your Honor. My family believes I'm losing my mind." "And do you contest their assessment?" I looked at Linda, at Edward sitting in the gallery like a concerned friend, at my sons, who avoided my eyes. "Not at this time, Your Honor." The gavel came down at 9:17 a.m. Edward Morrison now controlled my retirement account, $847,000. Linda received authority over my medical decisions and living arrangements. I was granted supervised access to $500 per month for personal expenses. 40 years of careful planning, gone in 17 minutes. Outside the courthouse, Edward shook my hand. "Patrick, I know this is difficult, but you won't have to worry about money anymore. I'll handle everything." His grip was firm, confident, the handshake of a man who'd just won. But Edward had never been good at reading engineering schematics. He'd missed some important details. While he'd been busy seizing control of my Chase retirement account, I'd been quietly moving assets to a different institution. Delaware Trust Company specifically. Trust number 4B7291, established March 15th, 2023. Irrevocable. Beyond the reach of guardianship orders. $1.8 million, safe in a legal structure Edward had never learned to navigate. The man who thought he'd stolen my fortune had actually claimed my decoy account. The real investigation began the day I lost my legal rights. Funny how losing everything clarifies your priorities. I started with the bank records Edward thought he controlled. Chase Private Client maintains detailed transaction logs, timestamps, IP addresses, device signatures. Information they'll provide to account holders who request it properly. The first transfer occurred September 12th, 2023. $11,000 moved from our joint retirement account to a personal checking account Linda had opened without my knowledge. The transfer was initiated at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was at work. Linda was supposedly at the hospital, pulling a double shift in the cardiac unit, but the IP address traced to our home computer. I pulled Linda's work schedule from the hospital's public directory. She'd called in sick that Tuesday. Family emergency, according to the notation. The emergency was stealing my money. Over the next 6 months, the pattern repeated. Small transfers, always when I was at work, always from our home computer, always signed with my name. But here's what Linda didn't understand about digital forensics. Every electronic signature has metadata, file creation timestamps, device fingerprints, user login sequences. The signatures authorizing these transfers were created on Linda's laptop, logged into her user account, using Adobe software I'd never installed. She'd been forging my authorization for 18 months. I documented everything. Screenshots, IP logs, metadata extracts, bank timestamps. I organized it all in folders labeled by date and transaction amount. Then I discovered something worse. Edward hadn't just been helping Linda steal my money. He'd been stealing from Meridian Technologies. SEC filing requirements mandate that corporate officers report their stock transactions within 2 business days. I pulled Edward's disclosures going back 3 years. September 8th, 2004. Ed Walter Morrison sold 12,000 shares of Meridian stock at $47 per share. September 15th, 2024. Meridian announced layoffs affecting 30% of the engineering division. Stock price dropped to $28 per share. Edward had made a profit of $228,000 by trading on insider information. The SEC takes insider trading seriously, especially when you can prove the defendant had access to material, non-public information about layoffs. I'd been in the planning meetings for those layoffs. Edward had chaired them, but the worst revelation was still coming. While I was documenting financial crimes, I discovered the real scope of their conspiracy. Linda hadn't just stolen my money, she'd recruited my children as accomplices. Phone records I subpoenaed through a public records request showed regular calls between Linda, Edward, and both my sons. Calls that intensified in the months leading up to my retirement. I obtained transcripts through a private investigator, perfectly legal in our state, which allows one-party consent recording. The conversation from November 3rd, 2024 was especially illuminating. Linda: your father's getting worse. Yesterday he forgot where he put his keys. David: Mom, are you sure about this whole guardianship thing? Linda: honey, we don't have a choice. He's not capable anymore. Edward's been helping me understand the legal options. Edward: David, your mother's right. Your father needs protection, from himself mainly. Michael: what about the money, though? Dad's worked his whole life for that retirement. Edward: the money will be safer with people who understand how to manage it properly. Trust me. Trust him. The man who'd stolen from his own company was asking my son to trust him with my life savings. The transcripts revealed the full scope of their manipulation. Edward had convinced my children that I was mentally incompetent. Linda had provided the medical evidence. Together, they'd constructed a narrative that painted me as a confused old man who needed their protection. My own family had been turned against me through a campaign of lies and manufactured concern, but they'd made one crucial error in their planning. Jennifer changed everything. My youngest daughter, 28, worked as an IT analyst for a consulting firm downtown. She'd always been the skeptical one, the child who asked uncomfortable questions and refused easy answers. The morning after the guardianship hearing, she called. Dad, can we talk? Privately? We met at Brewster's Coffee, a place near her office. Jennifer looked tired, stressed. She'd been crying. I know about the money, she said without preamble. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. Jennifer, no, Dad, listen to me. I've been monitoring the family network for months. Mom asked me to set up remote access to your computer in case of emergencies. She said you were getting forgetful about technology. Jennifer pulled out her laptop. So I installed monitoring software, legal surveillance, since it's the family network and you're the primary account holder. I wanted to see what kind of help you actually needed. The screen showed network logs, transaction records, IP addresses, the digital fingerprints of 18 months of theft. Mom's been accessing your accounts from her laptop. She's got saved passwords, cached authentication tokens, even a digital copy of your signature. She's been practicing for months, Dad, perfecting the forgery. Jennifer clicked through folders of evidence, screenshots, bank records, email correspondence between Linda and Edward discussing asset management strategies. But there's something else, Jennifer said. Something worse. She pulled up Edward's work computer logs from Meridian's IT department. As an executive, his digital activity was monitored for security compliance. Edward's been accessing confidential financial reports, merger discussions, layoff plans. He knew about the September announcement 6 weeks before it happened. And look what he did with that information. The SEC trading records appeared on screen. Edward's stock sales, timed perfectly to avoid the market crash. That's insider trading, I said. That's federal prison time, Jennifer corrected. If someone reports it. She closed the laptop and looked at me directly. Dad, I need you to know something. When Mom told us you were getting dementia, I didn't believe it. You've never forgotten a birthday, anniversary, or important date in your life. You remember conversations from 20 years ago, word for word. Her voice cracked slightly. But David and Michael, they wanted to believe it. Mom painted this picture of you struggling, suffering, too proud to ask for help. She made us think we were saving you. Jennifer reached across the table and grabbed my hand. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry we let them do this to you. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have trusted you instead of trusting her story. She was quiet for a moment. Then her expression hardened. So, what are we going to do about it? For the first time in months, I smiled. We're going to show them what happens when you steal from an engineer who documents everything. I told Jennifer about the Delaware Trust, about the 18 months of preparation, about the evidence I'd been gathering while Linda and Edward thought they were manipulating a confused old man. The money they stole is just the beginning, I explained. Edward's insider trading is a federal crime. Linda's medical fraud is elder abuse. The conspiracy to defraud me of my retirement is wire fraud across state lines. Jennifer's eyes widened. Dad, those are serious charges. Serious enough to get the FBI's attention, which brings me to something I need you to help me with. I explained my plan. The wiretap authorization I was seeking, the sting operation I'd been designing, the evidence collection that would give us everything we needed for criminal prosecution. But I need someone on the inside, I said. Someone they trust. Someone who can get them to talk openly about what they've done. Jennifer didn't hesitate. What do you need me to do? We spent 2 hours planning every detail. The conversations she'd initiate, the questions she'd ask, the recording equipment I'd provide. As we prepared to leave, Jennifer asked the question I'd been dreading. Dad, what about David and Michael? They're going to be devastated when they learn the truth. I was quiet for a long moment. Your brothers chose to believe your mother's lies because it was easier than asking hard questions. They chose to support taking away my rights because it felt like the compassionate thing to do. I stood up, put on my coat. But compassion without wisdom is just enabling cruelty. They're going to have to live with the consequences of their choices. Jennifer nodded. And Mom? What happens to her? Your mother stopped being my wife the day she decided to steal from me. Now she's just another criminal I'm going to prosecute. As I walked to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just for justice, but for the restoration of truth. The thieves thought they'd won, but the game was just beginning. Federal judges don't take meetings with random citizens, but they do review properly filed emergency motions supported by documented evidence of ongoing crimes. I spent 3 days crafting the filing, 27 pages of evidence, meticulously organized and legally cited. Bank records, digital forensics, SEC violation documentation, medical fraud proof. The motion requested an immediate asset freeze on all accounts touched by the conspiracy, plus federal investigation authorization for the wire fraud and insider trading crimes. Janet Kowalski, the estate attorney I'd hired, reviewed every page. "Patrick, this is bulletproof," she said. "But are you sure you want to go nuclear? Once we file this, there's no going back." They went nuclear first. I'm just returning fire. Friday morning, 10:30 a.m., we filed the emergency motion in Federal District Court. Judge Roberto Martinez presiding. By 2:15 p.m., I had my answer. The asset freeze was granted. Every account Linda and Edward had touched was now locked pending criminal investigation. The $847,000 they'd controlled? Frozen solid. But the best part was what happened next. Edward's office phone rang at 2:47 p.m. I know the exact time because Jennifer was recording everything from her position in Meridian's IT department. "Mr. Morrison, this is Agent Patricia Williams with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. We need to schedule an interview regarding SEC violations and wire fraud allegations. Are you available Monday morning?" Jennifer said Edward's face went white as hospital sheets. Linda got her call at 3:15 p.m. She was at work, pulling what she'd claimed was a double shift. The nursing supervisor had to call her away from a patient. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Agent John Fletcher. We have some questions about medical documentation and financial transactions. Can you come to our office Monday at 2 p.m.? My daughter watched Linda sit down heavily in a break room chair, her hands shaking as she ended the call. The federal government moves slowly until it doesn't. When it does move, it's like watching a controlled avalanche. By 4 p.m., I had a call from David. "Dad, what the hell is going on? Mom called crying about FBI agents and frozen accounts. She says you've lost your mind completely." "I've never been thinking more clearly. She says you're filing false accusations, making up stories about theft and fraud. Ask her about the $343,000 missing from our retirement account." Silence. "Ask her about Edward's SEC violations. Ask her about the medical records Dr. Hamilton falsified." "Dad, you're not making sense?" "David, here's what's going to make sense to you. Every dollar your mother stole, every lie she told, every document she forged, I have proof. FBI grade, federal court admissible proof." One more silence. The guardianship hearing was based on fraudulent medical evidence. The financial authority Edward received was obtained through conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Your mother has been systematically stealing my retirement money for 18 months. That's impossible. Is it? When did you last see our actual bank statements? When did you last verify Mom's claims about my mental state with an independent doctor? I could hear David breathing hard on the other end of the line. "The FBI wouldn't be involved if I was making this up," I said. "Federal agents don't investigate the fantasies of dementia patients." Jesus Christ. Your mother bet everything on me being too confused to fight back. She was wrong. David hung up. Michael called 20 minutes later. Same conversation, different level of shock. "Dad, if this is true, if Mom really did these things..." "It's true. How long have you known?" 18 months. I've been documenting everything while they thought they were manipulating a confused old man. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought it was more evidence of my deteriorating mental state?" Michael was quiet for a long time. "I don't know," he finally said. "That's an honest answer. I respect honest answers." "What happens now?" "Now we let the justice system work. Your mother and Edward are going to face federal charges for wire fraud, elder abuse, medical fraud, and securities violations. And us? What happens to the family?" "That depends on what you choose to do with the truth." That evening, Linda called. I almost didn't answer. "Patrick, we need to talk. We can talk through our attorneys. Please, 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I listened. "I know you're angry," she said, "but you have to understand I was scared. The doctors said your condition would get worse. I didn't know how we'd manage financially." "So you decided to manage my finances by stealing them?" "It wasn't stealing. We're married. It was our money." "The forgery was stealing. The medical fraud was stealing. The conspiracy with Edward was stealing." She was crying now. "I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go? Just the first 100,000? The first fake diagnosis?" I was trying to protect our future. You were trying to steal my present. Patrick, if you testify against me, I could go to prison. You could. You probably will. How can you do this to someone you loved for 32 years? The question hung in the air like smoke. Linda, I did love you for 32 years. But the woman I loved wouldn't have stolen from me. The woman I loved wouldn't have destroyed my medical records. The woman I loved wouldn't have turned my children against me with lies. I paused. You stopped being that woman the day you decided I was worth more to you financially diminished than mentally intact. So that's it? 32 years means nothing? 32 years means everything. That's why what you did is unforgivable. The line went quiet. The FBI interview is Monday, I said. I suggest you hire a very good attorney. Sunday evening, 6 p.m. Linda had requested a family meeting at our house. The house that was now technically mine alone, thanks to the asset freeze reversing her guardianship authority. Everyone came. Linda, David, Michael, even Jennifer, playing her role as the dutiful daughter, still supporting her mother's version of events. The living room felt like a courtroom. Linda sat in her usual chair, hands folded in her lap like a defendant awaiting sentencing. Edward hadn't come. His lawyer had probably told him to avoid any contact with family members until after the FBI interviews. David spoke first. Dad, we need to figure this out. As a family, there's nothing to figure out. Your mother committed federal crimes. The FBI is investigating. The evidence will speak for itself. But maybe there's a way to handle this privately, Michael said, without destroying everyone's lives. Linda looked up hopefully. Patrick, if you drop the charges, we can work this out. I'll return the money, all of it. You can't return 18 months of thinking I was losing my mind. You can't return the humiliation of that guardianship hearing. You can't return the trust my children lost in me. David shifted uncomfortably. Dad, we're sorry about that. We were just trying to help. Help who? Me or the people stealing from me? We didn't know. You didn't want to know. Your mother told you I was mentally incompetent, and you accepted that without question because it made you feel important, necessary. The words hit like physical blows. That's not fair, Michael said. Fair? Your mother forged my signature on financial documents. She falsified medical records. She conspired with my boss to steal my retirement savings. She manipulated you into supporting her by painting me as a confused old man who needed protection. I stood up, and when I tried to defend myself, you called me delusional. When I questioned the medical diagnosis, you said I was too proud to accept help. When I expressed concern about the guardianship, you told me Edward was a better man for this situation. David's face flushed red. We thought we were doing the right thing. You thought you were inheriting early. The room went dead silent. That's what this was really about, wasn't it? Not protecting me from myself, but protecting your inheritance from my poor judgment. Edward convinced you that I might spend your future unwisely. Linda started crying. Patrick, that's not true. Then explain the life insurance changes you made without telling me. The policy that would have paid out double if I'd been declared mentally incompetent. Jennifer's eyes widened in genuine shock. This was news even to her. You researched the financial benefits of having me declared unfit. You calculated how much more you'd inherit if I was institutionalized versus if I remained legally competent. I pulled out a folder of documents. Shady Oaks Nursing Facility. Monthly cost, $8,500. Average life expectancy for dementia patients in their care, 14 months. Total estimated cost, $119,000. I set the papers on the coffee table. Compared to my normal life expectancy of 12 years, during which I might spend as much as $600,000 on travel, hobbies, and living expenses. The math was brutal and clear. Having me declared mentally incompetent and institutionalized would have saved the family nearly $500,000. David looked sick. Dad, we never thought about it like that. Edward did. He showed you the numbers, didn't he? Explained how much more efficient it would be to manage my care in a professional setting? No one answered. Your mother didn't just steal my money. She didn't just forge my signature. She didn't just falsify medical records. She calculated the profit margin on my mental decline. Linda stood up abruptly. I can't listen to this anymore. Sit down. The command in my voice stopped her cold. You wanted this family meeting. You wanted to work things out. So let's work it out. I looked at each of them in turn. David, Michael, you have a choice to make. You can continue supporting your mother's version of events, in which case you're accessories after the fact to federal crimes. Or you can acknowledge the truth and start rebuilding some integrity. David was the first to break. Dad, we made a mistake. A huge mistake. Yes, you did. How do we fix it? You start by telling the truth. To the FBI, to yourselves, to anyone who asks. Your mother isn't the victim here. She's the perpetrator. Michael nodded slowly. We'll testify. If they need us to testify, we'll tell them what really happened. What really happened is that your mother manipulated you into betraying me. What really happened is that you chose to believe her lies because it felt like compassion. What really happened is that you helped steal 40 years of my work. Linda was sobbing now. Patrick, please. I'm begging you. Begging me for what? Mercy? The same mercy you showed when you had me declared mentally incompetent? The same mercy you showed when you stole $300,000? I'm your wife. You were my wife. Now you're just someone who committed crimes against me. I walked toward the door. The FBI interviews are tomorrow. I suggest you all think very carefully about what you're going to say, because lying to federal agents is also a crime. As I reached the door, David called out, Dad, what happens to us now? To the family? I turned back. That depends on how much truth you can handle. The call came Tuesday evening, 24 hours after the FBI interviews. Linda's voice was barely recognizable. Patrick, we need to talk, in person, right now. Our attorneys said, Forget the attorneys. Edward's lawyer just called. The FBI found something else. My blood ran cold. What kind of something else? Meet me at Brewster's Coffee in an hour. Come alone. I almost didn't go. Every instinct told me it was a trap, another manipulation. But Linda's voice carried something I hadn't heard in months. Genuine terror. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the back booth, with her hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it was the only solid thing in the world. They found the nursing home contracts, she said without preamble. I sat down across from her. What nursing home contracts? Edward owns 30% of Shady Oaks, the facility where we were going to place you. The words hit like a physical blow. He gets a kickback for every patient admitted, $12,000 per placement, plus 30% of the monthly fees. I did the math quickly. With my projected 14-month stay at $8,500 per month, Edward would have made nearly $54,000 from my institutionalization. That's not the worst part, Linda continued. There's worse. The FBI pulled Shady Oaks' admission records. In the last 3 years, Edward has referred 17 patients, 17 elderly people whose families were convinced they needed professional care. Linda's voice was shaking. Average life expectancy for his referrals, 11 months. Industry average for similar patients in other facilities, 28 months. The implication was staggering. He's been systematically murdering elderly people for profit? The FBI thinks so. They're exhuming bodies, Patrick. They're treating this as a serial killing investigation. I sat back in my chair, trying to process the magnitude of what Linda was telling me. How did you find out? Edward's lawyer called me this morning. He's trying to negotiate a plea bargain. He wants to testify against the nursing home administrators in exchange for reduced charges on the financial crimes. And you? Linda looked directly at me for the first time since I'd arrived. I'm facing 25 years in federal prison. Wire fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy, medical fraud. If they can prove I knew about the nursing home scheme, they'll add accessory to murder. Did you know? A long silence. I suspected something was wrong when Edward kept pushing for that specific facility. He had literature ready, cost comparisons, admission paperwork. It felt rehearsed. But you went along with it. I told myself it was just business, that Edward had connections in the healthcare industry. She started crying. Patrick, I never meant for people to die. I just wanted security, financial security for us. You wanted security so badly you were willing to have me killed for it. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. That's not... I didn't think about it like that. How else should I think about it? You conspired to have me declared mentally incompetent and placed in a facility where the average patient dies in 11 months. What did you think would happen? Linda broke down completely. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking about the money, about inheriting my retirement fund intact instead of watching me spend it on actually living. Yes, she whispered. God help me. Yes. We sat in silence for several minutes. Other customers came and went, ordering coffee, chatting about normal things like work and weather and weekend plans. What do you want from me, Linda? I want you to know I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. And I want you to know that I'm going to testify against Edward. I'm going to tell them everything I know about the nursing home scheme. That's the right thing to do. Will it matter? For sentencing, I mean? I studied my wife of 32 years, the woman who'd raised my children, shared my bed, celebrated my successes, and comforted my failures, the woman who'd been planning my death for financial gain. I don't know, Linda. I'm not the judge. But you could speak for me. Character witness. Tell them I'm not a monster. Aren't you? She flinched like I'd struck her. I made terrible choices, but I'm not a killer. You were willing to benefit from killing. You were willing to place me in a facility you suspected was murdering patients. The only difference between you and Edward is that he was the one collecting the blood money directly. Linda wiped her eyes. So that's it? 32 years of marriage and I'm just a monster to you now? 32 years of marriage and you decided I was worth more dead than alive. You tell me what that makes you. I stood up to leave. Patrick, wait. There's something else. What now? The children. David and Michael. The FBI wants to interview them again. They think the boys might have known more than they admitted. My stomach dropped. Known what? About the nursing home. About Edward's financial interest. Michael asked questions about the facility's profit margins during one of our planning meetings. Planning meetings? We had family meetings, Patrick, while you were at work, to discuss your care, your placement, the logistics. I felt like I was drowning. My children attended meetings to plan my institutionalization. They thought they were planning your care. They were planning my execution. Linda started to object, then stopped herself. Maybe they were, she said quietly. Maybe we all were. I walked out of that coffee shop knowing that everything I'd thought about my family was wrong. My wife wasn't just a thief. She was a potential accomplice to murder. My sons weren't just manipulated victims. They were potentially willing participants in a conspiracy to kill me. The only person I could trust was Jennifer, and even she didn't know the full scope of what our family had become. As I drove home, one thought echoed in my mind. 48 hours until the grand jury convened. 48 hours until I learned whether my children would be charged as accessories to attempted murder. The game had evolved far beyond simple financial fraud. This was now about survival, mine and possibly theirs. Federal judges move fast when serial murder is involved. Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, I sat in Judge Martinez's chambers with Janet Kowalski and 2 FBI agents. Mr. Wilson, we need your help with something unusual, Agent Williams said. She slid a document across the table. Wiretap authorization, federal level, covering my phone, Edward's phone, and Linda's phone. We believe Edward Morrison is planning to eliminate potential witnesses, including you. The words hit like ice water. Eliminate? We intercepted communications between Morrison and an associate discussing cleaning up loose ends. Your name was mentioned specifically. Agent Fletcher opened a laptop. We need you to make some calls. Controlled conversations designed to get Morrison talking about the nursing home operation. You want me to be bait. We want you to be justice. This is your chance to get admissions that will put Morrison away for life and possibly save other elderly victims. Judge Martinez leaned forward. Mr. Wilson, this is entirely voluntary. But I'll be frank. Morrison has killed before, and he'll kill again if we don't stop him. I thought about the 17 elderly people Edward had referred to shady pokes. 17 families who'd trusted him to care for their loved one. What do you need me to do? Agent Williams handed me a script. Call Morrison. Tell him you're willing to make a deal. You'll drop all charges in exchange for your money back and a guarantee of no retaliation. He'll be suspicious. He'll be desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. They fitted me with recording equipment. Digital, FBI grade, legally admissible. The kind of technology I'd worked with for decades, but never for something like this. At 2:30 p.m., I made the call. Edward answered on the second ring. Patrick, I wondered when I'd hear from you. We need to talk. I'm sure we do. Are you ready to be reasonable about this situation? Depends what reasonable looks like. Reasonable looks like you dropping these ridiculous federal charges and letting us work out a private settlement. I followed the script carefully. And in return? In return, you get your money back and you don't have any more health problems. The threat was barely veiled. What kind of health problems? Patrick, you're 65 years old. Accidents happen, heart attacks, strokes. Sometimes people just deteriorate rapidly. Like the people at Shady Oaks? A long pause. What do you know about Shady Oaks? I know you own 30% of it. I know you refer patients there. I know they don't live very long once they arrive. Patrick, you're playing a dangerous game. Am I? Or am I just asking questions about your business model? Edward's voice turned cold. My business model is very simple. I identify problems and solve them permanently. The FBI agents were nodding, making notes. This was exactly what they needed. Problems like elderly people with inconvenient life expectancies. Problems like people who don't know when to shut up and disappear. Is that a threat, Edward? It's a promise. You have 24 hours to drop these charges and stop asking questions. Otherwise, you're going to discover that retirement can be very hazardous to your health. And if I don't cooperate? Patrick, do you remember Jim Hendricks from accounting? Retired 2 years ago, perfect health, then suddenly developed complications at Shady Oaks? My blood ran cold. Jim had been a friend, a colleague who'd retired just before me. What happened to Jim? Jim asked too many questions about some financial irregularities he'd noticed. Unfortunately, his mental state deteriorated rapidly after his family had him evaluated for dementia. You killed Jim. I solved a problem. Just like I'm going to solve the Patrick Wilson problem if you don't start cooperating. How many others, Edward? Enough to know exactly how this process works. The medical documentation, the family meetings, the placement procedures. I've perfected the system. Agent Williams was gesturing for me to keep him talking. The system for murdering elderly people? The system for managing inconvenient situations? Sometimes that means early retirement from life. Edward laughed, actually laughed. Patrick, you always were too literal, too focused on details instead of big picture strategy. What's the big picture here? The big picture is that you shut up, disappear into whatever hole I dig for you, and let the smart people handle the complicated business. Or you join Jim Hendricks and 16 other people who couldn't learn when to stop asking questions. Thursday, 3:45 p.m., Edward's office at Meridian Technologies. I walked in carrying a briefcase and wearing a wire that could record a whispered confession from across the room. Edward was waiting, confident and relaxed. The man who'd spent months stealing my money and planning my death thought he'd already won. Patrick, right on time. I appreciate punctuality in my business associates. Associates? That's what we are now. Business partners in a mutually beneficial arrangement. I sat down across from his desk, the same desk where I'd reported to him for 15 years. The irony wasn't lost on me. Let's talk about the terms. Edward opened a folder. Simple. You sign this withdrawal of all federal complaints. The FBI investigation stops. The asset freezes get lifted. Everyone goes back to their normal lives. And in return, you get $300,000 back. Not all of it, because there are administrative costs to consider, but enough to live comfortably. What about the other $700,000? Consider it a fee for services rendered, management costs, processing expenses. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a digital recorder, setting it on his desk in plain view. Edward raised an eyebrow. What's that for? Documentation. I've learned to document everything. Patrick, I don't think you understand your position here. Explain it to me. Edward leaned back in his chair. You're a 65-year-old man with a documented history of mental decline. No one's going to believe your conspiracy theories about nursing home murders and financial fraud. The FBI believe them. The FBI is fishing. They don't have real evidence, just suspicions and coincidences. I smiled. Actually, Edward, they have quite a bit more than that. Such as digital records of your stock trades, bank transfers showing the kickbacks from Shady Oaks, medical records you falsified, email correspondence between you and Linda, discussing my management. Edward's confidence wavered slightly. They also have something else, I continued. What? They have this conversation. Edward looked at the recorder on his desk, then back at me. You're recording this? With federal authorization, one-party consent, completely legal. His face went white. Patrick, what have you done? I've given you enough rope to hang yourself, and you've been remarkably cooperative. Edward stood up abruptly. Turn that thing off. I don't think so. Patrick, you don't understand what you're dealing with. I have resources, connections, people who specialize in solving problems like you. Like the people who solved Jim Hendrix? Jim was weak, sentimental, he couldn't see the bigger picture. Which is, Edward began pacing behind his desk, the bigger picture is that society has too many unproductive elderly people consuming resources they didn't earn. My work at Shady Oaks is actually a public service. The admission was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that it took my breath away. You're systematically murdering elderly people and calling it public service? I'm accelerating natural processes for people who are already dying. The average person spends their last 5 years in expensive medical care, consuming hundreds of thousands of dollars in resources. My system reduces that to 11 months. Your system murders them. My system is efficient, clean, profitable for everyone involved. Edward stopped pacing and looked directly at me. Including the families, Patrick. Do you think Linda would have cooperated if she thought she was going to wait 5 years for your natural death? She wanted her inheritance now, while she's young enough to enjoy it. So you offered her a solution. I offered her efficiency, 11 months of care costs versus 5 years of gradual decline. The math is simple. The math is murder. Edward shrugged. The math is business, and business has been very good. How many people have you killed? Personally? None. I don't handle the operational details. How many have you arranged to be killed? Edward considered the question. 17 over the past 3 years. Not counting you, obviously. What makes me different? You're not dead yet. The casual way he said it made my skin crawl. But you're going to fix that. Patrick, you forced my hand. I offered you a reasonable settlement. I gave you every opportunity to disappear quietly, but you chose to involve federal agents and recording devices. Edward opened his desk drawer. For a terrifying moment, I thought he might pull out a weapon. Instead, he pulled out his phone. One call, he said, and you'll have a medical emergency before you leave this building. Heart attack, most likely. Very common in men your age, especially under stress. And if I don't leave this building, then you'll have a medical emergency right here. Either way, the Patrick Wilson problem gets solved today. I stood up, picked up the recorder, and put it back in my briefcase. Edward, there's something you should know. What? I didn't come here alone. Edward's eyes widened as FBI agents entered his office from the hallway. Agent Williams stepped forward. Edward Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, elder abuse, and securities violations. As they handcuffed him, Edward looked at me with something approaching respect. Well played, Patrick. I underestimated you. No, I said. You underestimated justice. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Edward Morrison was convicted on 17 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, 43 counts of wire fraud, and 12 counts of securities violations. Sentenced to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. Linda received 8 years for elder abuse, wire fraud, and conspiracy. She'll be eligible for parole in 5 years if she maintains good behavior. David and Michael were never charged. The FBI determined they were manipulated victims rather than willing conspirators, but they'll have to live with the knowledge that they supported a plan to have me killed. Jennifer testified for the prosecution. Her technical evidence was crucial in proving the digital forgery and financial fraud. She started her own cybersecurity consulting firm, specializing in protecting elderly people from digital financial abuse. But the biggest revelation came during the discovery phase of the trial. The Delaware Trust wasn't my only preparation. 2 years ago, when I first suspected Linda was stealing from me, I didn't just move money to a protected trust. I established an entirely separate financial identity. Wilson Engineering Consulting LLC, registered in Delaware with me as the sole owner. Business bank accounts, professional liability insurance, client contracts already signed. While Linda and Edward were stealing $800,000 from my Chase retirement account, I was building a consulting business worth $1.8 million in intellectual property, client relationships, and ongoing contracts. The money they thought they were stealing? That was my decoy fortune. My real assets were hidden in plain sight as a business entity they never thought to investigate. "How long have you been planning this?" Jennifer asked when I explained everything. 40 years. Every project I completed, every system I designed, every client relationship I built at Meridian, I documented it all. When I founded Wilson Engineering Consulting, I brought decades of expertise and industry connections with me. "You've been preparing for retirement since you started working?" "I've been preparing for independence. There's a difference. And the consulting firm specializes in protecting critical infrastructure from cyber attacks. My clients include 3 Fortune 500 companies, 2 federal agencies, and 7 municipal governments. The work is challenging, intellectually stimulating, and financially rewarding. At 65, I'm busier than I've ever been. More importantly, I'm working with people who value my expertise, rather than plotting to eliminate me for their convenience." Last month, I received a letter from Linda in federal prison. She apologized again, asked if I might visit, suggested we could work things out when she's released. I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. David and Michael have tried to rebuild our relationship. They visit occasionally, always apologetic, always asking what they can do to repair the damage. The answer is simple. Learn to think for yourselves. Question authority, even when it comes from family. Verify claims, especially when they're convenient. Trust, but verify everything. I've established new boundaries with both of them. They're welcome in my life, but they're not welcome in my financial decisions. They can earn back my trust through consistent behavior over time, not through apologies and good intentions. Jennifer works with me now, part-time, handling the digital security aspects of my consulting business. She's brilliant at what she does, and more importantly, she's earned my trust through her actions during the worst period of my life. The business is growing faster than I expected. Apparently, there's significant demand for cybersecurity expertise from someone who's actually survived a sophisticated digital attack. My story has become part of my marketing. Clients hire me not just for my technical skills, but for my proven ability to identify, document, and defeat complex fraud schemes. Justice, it turns out, is not only morally satisfying, it's also highly profitable.